Welcome back, guys. So today we will cover the error handling in Mule 4. So let me move to the slide. Okay. So today's topic is error handling. So error, what is an error? First question is what is an error? An error is an unexpected event. I'm explaining in terms of MuleSoft. So an error is an unexpected event that happens while processing a computer program. So to respond those exception handling was introduced. Okay, so in Mule 4, error handling is like no longer limited to a Java exception handling process that requires you to check the source code or force an error in order to understand what happened. Okay. Also in Mule 3 and Mule 4, some people I think worked on Mule 3 and now working on Mule 4. So there are a lot of changes happened in Mule 4 because Mule 4 error handling is now very easy compared to Mule 3. Okay, so this is the important class where I will explain all about Mule 4 error handling. So type of errors. There are broadly two ways to define the errors in MuleSoft, like message level errors and system level error. So message level error occurs when a mule message is involved. Example, you are getting an error when calling a database, like calling a Salesforce or any external system. Okay, so like 401 unauthorized, 503 service unavailable, similar kind of issues. Okay, so those are message level errors. The system level error occurs when there is no mule message involved. Example, connectivity issue to a database, something like that. Okay, so in mule message errors like 401 unauthorized. So when we are giving wrong credentials to access the system, okay, when we are like when there is no service available but we are requesting to that service. So those type of errors are mule message. System error is simply like a connectivity issues, some based on the your systems. Those are system level errors. Okay, now error types in Mule 4. Okay, so there are like error types. So Mule has some structure. Okay, Mule has structured all the errors based on their error types. So what is error type? Error type is just simply if you see in the Anypoint Studio, when you run the program and you get some error, right? So there you get like something, this kind of error type, like HTTP unauthorized, HTTP connectivity error, something like this. So here, error type is a mixture of namespace and identifier. So this is the identifier of error, and this is the namespace of the error. So namespace, how namespace, like it is HTTP when you are using HTTP connector, okay, and then you are getting an error. So it is like HTTP unauthorized. Whatever request you hit through the HTTP, it is unauthorized. So it will give you error type like HTTP unauthorized. When you are connecting with the Salesforce connector or some error occurs, so then there will be something like Salesforce colon unauthorized, something like that. So these are the error types. Okay, so whenever an error occurs, an error object get created. Whenever an error will occur or whenever error you will face in your mule flow, there will be an error object. So it mainly contains your description, your error type, and your like detailed description, what is the mule message, all these kind of things will be in the error object. Okay, and that you can access using one moment. And that you can access like error.description, error types. So this is kind of like error types. Okay, so one moment. Okay. Also, there is a one feature in MuleSoft that can identify the types of error that occur within that flow by looking at what type of connectors are placed in that particular flow. So if I go to MuleSoft Anypoint Studio and if I open, for example, Hello World Station API. Okay, so let me show you. Whatever I will explain in the PPT, I will show you parallelly in the Anypoint Studio. So here it is an it has an excellent feature that can identify the types of errors. Types of errors means like HTTP unauthorized, or Salesforce dot something like that. So let me open this Hello World System API, Station API, where we use the database connector to interact with the our database. Let me open the hello world.xml. So if you see, okay, we don't have in this my DB POC. Let me open this one. So in this one, we have this database. So when we use some error handler, for example, we have this. If you see type. So if you see, we use this DB connector. So that's why in our error handler, it will show you all those error types like DB beds, SQL syntax, DB connectivity, DB query execution, expression, these. So all these error types, it will show automatically. So this is the like by default feature that can identify the types of error that can occur within that flow by looking at what kind of connectors are placed in that particular flow. Okay, so because we use only database connector, so it is showing all the types of related to database. Let me place the HTTP requester. HTTP requester. Don't worry about this error handler like that I use on error continue. I will explain you, but I'm just showing you when we use error handler, what automatically it identify. Okay, so this is the HTTP request. Now, if you go to on error continue, if you see this types, so you can see now it is showing you other than DB, it is showing you HTTP connectivity forbidden, all error types that is related to our HTTP request. Okay, let me just read this one. Okay, so now to the next point. Yeah, Mule4 identifies the error based upon the error type and then only directs it to the respective error handling block. Okay, so when we use some error handling blocks in our Mule flow, then if whatever error type we will select, based on that, it will route to the based on that error type, it will route to those error handling blocks. Okay, if we, for example, we are getting HTTP connectivity issue, but we did not select that error type in our error handler, then what will happen? It will not move because it will not go to that error handler block because it is for it is specific to HTTP connectivity. Okay, so and but we are getting something error, some error like HTTP some not found. Okay, so but we define error type as HTTP connectivity, so it will not move to that. Okay, so this is kind of the error types in Mule4. And this is the example how we identify the error type and all those things. Now, error hierarchy. So there is a error hierarchy in Mule, like errors, any type of errors and critical errors. Critical errors are like fatal overload, and in any we have unknown and all these kind of errors. Okay, so all errors either these, any or critical. So critical, they cannot be handled, but general like any these transform routing connectivity, which allows matching all types and like at the top of the general hierarchy is any. This is the general hierarchy, which allows matching all types under it, like transformation, routing, connectivity, expression, all these types. Okay, so it is important. Now, what about unknown? It is like faded. Okay, so it is important to note that unknown type. So which is used when no clear reason for the failure is found. When we don't get any clear, any clear region from system or like from some APIs, in that case, this unknown type will be the error type. So this error can only be handled through any type to allow specifying the unclear errors in the future. For example, we have transform message and in error handler, one moment, I will keep it again. Error continue. Okay, so here instead of selecting specific to that, we'll select all. So what will happen when there will be any error that is related, that is unknown type, then it will automatically move to this owner and continue error handler or whatever we will use, whatever error handler will be there. OK, but when we specifically use some types, like for example, only expression and or like HTTP connectivity, HTTP not found, in that case, it will not move to this error handler. Then it will go to default error handler that is like inbuilt in the MuleSoft. OK, so when it comes to connectors, each connector defines its error type. Like I have already explained you, each connector means like database connector, then DB connectivity, all these kind of errors will be there. OK, so it depends on connector, what connector we are using. Based on that, we get all its error types. So when it comes to connector, each connector defines its error type hierarchically, considering the core runtime one. Through connectivity and reta-agnostic types are always present because they are common to all connectors. So these like connectivity and reta-agnostic types are always present for each connector because these are the common one. OK, so this is this is about like our error hierarchy. So this is the diagram. Sometimes interviewer ask you like what type of in general hierarchy, what type of error types we have in critical. Can we handle the critical errors, or what is unknown error types? How we handle unknown error types? So this diagram is explaining all those things. Now come to the classification of errors. So classification, like you should first segregate the errors, like based on your requirements. OK, like what type of errors will be there, like business error, technical errors, any unhandled errors. So we need to categorize all those errors based on our API design. OK, so business error, what in the business error comes like data errors, validation errors, like if there is a mapping sheet and based on that mapping sheet you are doing some validation rules, so that validations are failing, so that will come under business errors. Same like technical errors. You are connecting with an API or database system and connectivity is failed. That will come under technical errors. OK, so why we are classifying all these errors? Because whenever these errors will occur, you will prepare a error message based on your error classification error. Like if it is a business error, then you will create some other you will send back some error response back to the client with specific to business errors. Like for example, error message. This is a business error because we are getting validation error. For example, if you are getting a technical error, then you will send a message like we have a technical issue in our API because we got database connectivity failure issue. So like that. That's why you categorize all the errors and based on that you create your error messages that you send back to the client. For example, some error occurs in system API, you will send back to the process API based on these categorizations. There are some API router errors and any unhandled errors like unknown. So if there are any unhandled errors, so based on that also you will create a message. So it will be easy to prepare your message so client also can understand easily. OK, these are the business errors, so we need to talk to business people. If it is a connectivity error, then we need to talk to developer and we need to talk to the, like for example, we are integrating with the DB, so we need to connect with the DB team, or we need to understand why we are facing the connectivity errors. Is the DB is down or what? OK, so that's why we classified all these errors. Now come to the next point. So error handling. In error handling, like we have different type of means we have uh, uh, means we can handle the exceptions and different levels like flow level, project level, like that. So at the project level, we use default error handler that is by default in our in our MuleSoft API. For example, if we don't use any handler, we don't use anything like till now, whatever APIs I was creating, hello world or whatever related to database, I was not using any error handling. OK, so whenever any error was there, it was automatically handled by MuleSoft. So that was our default error handling. And by default, what was happening, what type of error code we will get in that case In that case, we get just 500 in the response. We were just getting here status was 500, or it depends on your HTTP listener also. When if you go to advanced, no responses. So here status code, error response, headers, status code. This status code you can define like anything 500 or based, it depends. But if you don't give, then automatically it will be a 500 because it is coming out from the MuleSoft default error handler. Okay, so if you are not using any error handling in MuleSoft, then by default there will be a default error handler that MuleSoft will take care for that. Okay, so that is if no error handler is defined, all runtime errors are handled by a mule default error handler. So mule default error handler handles all messaging errors thrown in the mule application implicitly and globally. So we don't need to worry if we are not using any error handling, but every time you will get 500 and message will be by default from that error handler. But you can set anything, because here if you see error.description, whenever your error will occur, there will be error object. In that error object you will get error. In that error object you will get different attributes like description and what we say message type. All these kind of things will be there. Okay, so it is easy to means in the body we just send that. But if you want to send your own message, in that case also you can just define it here in the response body. In that case you will get that, like for example the error occurred and it is handled by mule default handler. So like that you can override this message. Otherwise by default it will be error.description and it will coming from like it will be like handled by MuleSoft default handler and will go back to the HTTP listener with the help of error.description. Okay, so this is about error handler. Also, it stops the execution of the flow. Okay, so whenever any error occurred, for example, error occurred this transform message, so it will stop the execution of the flow and logs the information about the error. Mule default error handler acts the same for all the applications and cannot be configured manually. You cannot alter whatever Mule default handler is there. You cannot configure it manually. Okay, but second, like there are different levels. So first is default error, second is custom global error handler. So when we cannot modify the MuleSoft default handler, but we can create a global error handler. It can be defined for the whole application in the same way, like Mule default handler is for complete application. In the same way, because we cannot configure manually, that's why we have custom global error handler. So whenever any error occurs, it will go to the global error handler, and there you can like handle the exceptions on your own way. So I will explain you how we define this global error handler in demo. Okay, so now the third one is at flow level. So flow level, we use raise error component, own error continue, and own error propagate. So raise error means if in some projects, whenever whenever there is some validation errors, like in data we are creating some message, but we have some requirements like if this validation fails, we need to raise a custom error. So then in that case, we use this raise error component. So if you see, these are the error handlers that we have. So this error handler we use to create like global error handling, on error continue, on error propagate, raise error for the flow level exception handling. We use these. So if I go to Anypoint Studio and we'll search like error. So if you see on error handler, on error continue, on error propagate, raise error, all four are here and we can drag and drop just in the error handling. Okay, so one more thing, as during my earlier classes, I have explained you where we can use these error handlers. We can use only in the flow and private flow because subflow doesn't have error handling scope. So we cannot use these in the subflows. We can use only in the flow and private flows. So error handlers scope is available only in flow and private flow. Like this is the flow. Here is the error handling scope. And if you see the flow, Let me delete one. And this is the flow and this is the subflow. We okay. In the subflow, we don't have any error handling scope, but in the flow and when we use a private flow, for example, we don't have in the private flow, we don't have any source, just the processors. Okay, so this is the private flow. Here also we have error handling scope. So only in flow and private flows we have error handling scopes. In subflows we don't have. Got it? Now at flow or at processor level using Triscope. So using Triscope, this is also a level to handle the exceptions in MuleSoft. That also we can search in the Mule palette like try. Okay, so this is the Tricat Scope. So I will explain you one by one what is default error handler is already explained. Custom global handler also I will explain how we will create it, how we will use raise error, own error continue, own error propagate, and try scope. So let's go to first own error continue. This is the diagram that we created. Like we have given some numbers to explain you about how own error continue will work. So own error continue. First is own error. What is own error continue? So when you don't want to let the parent flow, this is the parent flow, this is the subflow, or you can say another flow. Okay. So when you do not want to let the parent flow or subflow know that error has occurred and want to continue the processing further. Okay, so for example, in this second flow, first flow is scheduler flow, second is call web service flow. So if any error occurs here, in this consume HTTP request, this connector consume. If any error occur here, but we don't want to let parent flow know that error occurred in the flow, what we'll do? We will use own error continue. What will happen using own error continue? When any error occurs, it will go to own error continue. There it will handle the error, whatever error occurred or exception, like whatever exception occurred, it will handle and then it will move to the next processor. Okay, but for example, we have scheduler first, then logger, then this call service, then if any error occur, like here in the parent flow also, then it will go to own error continue, then it will go to set variable, it will transform the message, then it will go to the next component like logger. But if everything is fine, okay, like 1 2 3 4 5 6, for example, fourth at the logger level we get some exception. So what will happen at the after the logger level, it will go to our own error continue error handler scope. There it will handle the error and then it will go to the then it will come out of the flow. But if there is no error occur, then just simple 1 2 3 4 and just come out of the flow. That's a pretty simple thing. I will explain all these things in the demo also, but just showing you while explaining the like a definition, or like when interviewer ask you, they will ask you these type of question. They will show you the flow and they will ask you what will happen after after for example 10th number, after this transform message and any error occurred. He or she will ask you what will happen. It will go back to the parent flow or it will just execute the logger. So you need to explain because we are using own error continue. So if any error occurs and at number 10, it will go to own error continue. It will process all the components at payload logger, and after that it will jump to the logger and it will execute. It will come out from the API successfully, right? But this is okay. This is all about own error continue. Own error continue, it will not stop your flow. It will execute the complete flow without knowing your main flow or your parent flow that any exception occurred. But what is own error propagate? So in own error propagate, error handler in error handle use own error propagate error handler when you want to propagate the error to the calling flow. Here in own error continue, we were not propagating the error back to the parent flow. We were just handling it and moving to the next processor. But here we need to let the parent flow know that any error occurred and we will go back. It will stop the flow and it will go back to the parent flow. Okay, for example, here like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 5, after 5, if any error occur, it will go to 6 and it will go to 7, and then it will come back from the API with an error message. Okay. So there is some more examples. One more second. I will show you one by one. One second. I'll copy into different slide. Okay. Let me paste it here. Okay, no problem. I'll explain here only. So here, own error continue catches the error here and does not report it does not report it as an error. Thus, the processing of the flow continues even after the error has occurred. So here in this example, the flow will process like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and after 3, because we are calling this web service flow. So after 3, it will go to this 7, 8, 9 and 7, 8, 9. But here, if any error occurred at the ninth one, then it will go to 12 and 13 and then come back to the fourth one, because we handle the exception, whatever error occurred, we handled it. So 9, 12, 13, and it will go back to the fourth one. Okay. So at point 13, the error is sent to its parent flow, that is like the scheduler flow, as a flow message, and then parent flow executes its processing further. Okay. So let me open the notepad, and there I will this one. I will make it a little bit smaller. So here, for example, after after 9 number, we get some error. So how flow will execute? So it will like first, second, third, fourth. No, not fourth, because third one is the calling flow. So then it will go to our seventh one, then eighth, then ninth. But after ninth, because we have a HTTP requester with the name of like consume, it is consuming any other web service or like any web service where we get any exception. So if because of exception occurred and we have error handling, and in error handling we have own error continuous scope. In that own error continuous scope, after exception handling occur, it will go to own error continuous scope. Then there it is a set payload. It will execute that processing. So it will be like after 9 it will be 12, and then it is 13. But after 13, at point number 13, the error will be sent back to the parent flow, or you can say, because it's handled, then it will go back to the parent flow, that is scheduler flow, as a flow message. Okay, as a flow message, and the parent flow executes its processing further. So after 12 and 13, it will be like 4. Okay, it will not execute these 10 and 11. It will execute next component of your parent flow. So that's why it is 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, and 4th. So this will be your execution steps. Okay, now come back to own error propagate. So in own error propagate, so in case of no error, like in case of happy path, so it will execute like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, these will be executed. But in case of error at point number 3, we get an error. Then what will happen in case of own error propagate? Because own error propagate will stop the execution of the flow completely. Okay, one more thing I forgot to tell you, in default handlers, we have by default own error propagate with, because whenever any error occurs, it stops the flow and it will go to default error handling, because it will not continue your flow. Continue means when there will be own error continue, then only it will continue your flow. Otherwise it will stop. So it is stopping. It means default error handler is using own error propagate. So now here, if at point number 3, if any error occur. So what will be the execution steps? Here it will be first, then second, then third, then six, and then seven. So first, second, third, six, and seven will execute. Okay, so this will be your execution. Now, for example, let me show you one diagram here in this flow. Okay, now in this flow, I am using scheduler flow and call web service flow. This is the same like we used while explaining the owner continuum. You see here, owner continuum explain scheduler flow, call web service flow, but we use own error continuum. But now I am showing you with own error propagate. So here, scheduler flow, this scheduler flow is calling the web service flow, this one. Okay. And in case of any error occurred at point number 9, because in the last example in owner continue, I explained with the error occurred at number 9. So what will happen here? How the flow will process? So it will be something like 1, 2, 3. After 3, it will call this call web service flow, and there it will like 7, 8, 9. Oh, sorry. 7, 7, 8, 9, and after 9 it error occurs and it will be 12 and then 13. So here, sorry, after 13, it will go back to our parent flow, that is scheduler flow. The error, so here what will happen, because it is owner propagate, so error is thrown to its parent flow. Whatever error we handled for this consumer, now after owner propagate, it will throw it, the error will throw back to the parent flow, that is scheduler flow, and the parent flow handler will get invoked. Like in the last time, it was in owner continue, it was happening something after 13. After, like in here, owner continue after 13, it was executing the fourth one. Like it was 9, 12, 13, and fourth. But when we are using owner propagate, then it will not go to the fourth one. It will go to the fifth and sixth. So it will be after 12, 13, it will be fifth and sixth. So this is the difference. And after 16, I mean 6, 5, 6. After 5 and 6, it will just complete the flow. It will come out with an error message, whatever we will set it in the transform message, or whatever message will be there. So it will come out with that. Okay. So now third one is the Tricat Scope. So Tricat Scope can be used within the flow, that we can use within the flow, like this one. We have consume, and for consume we are using try and catch, and it's but here we were using, like here if you see within a flow. So here we were using like in error handling scopes, and we were not using during our flow processing, but try catch scope we can use in the flow processing and at the flow level. Okay. So it can be very useful in case where we want to add a separate error processing strategy for various components. For example, for each component, if we want to use a separate processing strategy, for example, any error occurred in this component, then how we need to handle, and if error occurs for like the transform message, then how we need to handle. So it is like at flow level. Okay, so here this is the try-catch scope. So for example, in case of we have 1, 2 logger transform requests, then we have try-catch scope. How? Let me show you try-catch scope first. So this is a try, just drag and drop in our flow. And here we have error handling, and then just put it this transform message inside the try catch block. So try catch block also have error handling scope where you can define own error, continue, or error propagate, because whenever any error occur, how you want to proceed. You want to proceed to the next component, or just you want to stop the flow. Based on that, you will have own error continue and own error propagate. So like this, we implement like this, we drag and drop and we put the component inside this try catch. Okay, let me show you the diagram. So here we have logger transform request, then we have consume. In consume we have in the try catch, and in the try catch we have scope on error propagate scope. Then transform message we have Salesforce query connector. There we use scope on error continue. And for the complete processing for the all the components, we have on error propagate at the flow level error handling. Means at the complete flow we have error handling scope, that is on error propagate. So how it will work, for example, in case flow is processing like first second and then it go to third one, but at the third point at web service consumer we got an error. So how the flow will execute, so it will be like first, second, and then third. And after third, because we have this consumer, this web service consumer inside the try catch block, so it will not go to directly to on error propagate. It will go first try catch scope error handling. That is, we have on error propagate and there's 7 and 8. So after first, second, third, it will go to 7 and then 8. Sorry, 8. Okay, and after that 8, because it's on air propagate, it will stop the flow. It will do whatever you want, but after that also it will not continue. It will just stop the flow and it will go to your defined error handler scope or to the default error handling of the mule. But we have a defined error handler scope here in our flow. So it will go to the step number 10. So after 8, it will go to 10 and then it will go to 11 and after that it will exit. But second case, sorry, where second case like execute third the web service consumer executed successfully, then flow will be first, second, third, and then it will be fourth. After that it will be 5. But now at Salesforce query connector we an error occurred. Okay, so but at Salesforce query connector we have on error continue. So after fifth an error occurred, it will go to point number 6. After, sorry, it will go to point number 9 because I gave the 9 to on error continue logger components. It will go to 9 and after executing it successfully, then it will go to number 6. It will go to number 6 flow. So how but after 6 it is executing successfully, then there will be no error. Whatever you will print in the logger, it will execute successfully. So it is executing first, second, third, fourth, fifth, ninth, and sixth. So this is the on error continue, and this is how on error continue and on error propagate, and how we use try catch scope. Okay, so now I will explain you all these things by doing a demo. So let me show you first. I will just remove this Tricat Scope. So here, so let me execute this. I will just create an error by giving the wrong query. Okay, so let me save this. I will execute it. MyDB POC, supply and debug. Now I will show you. So there is nothing to present in the error handler low. So it will go to default error handler and it will give us a 500 status code with the error description. Okay. So we will see what type of error description will be there and how it will be. Quickly we will see. Let me see. It is HTTPS. Okay, 8082. Let me prepare the Postman quickly. Postman collection. We already have that. This first DB. We have path as first DB, API/first DB. What is in listener? This listener. API first DB. Okay. So Postman is already ready. Once it will finish the build and deployment, we will we will hit through Postman, and then we'll see what will happen and what will be the message description we will get. Because I told you during error handling, default error handling, like if no error handler is defined, all runtime errors are handled by MuleSoft default error handler. Okay, so we'll see. And here, okay, here. So error type, whenever error occurs, an error object is created and it contains many properties like error.description. And we get whatever error comes here in the response, we get error.description every time. You go to listener responses. This is the response, and there we have error.description. So that's why we will get error.description in the response. Let me see the console. Okay, it's initializing, then it will start the application. I will show you first with the error.description. That is by default. We did not change anything. By default, it is in whenever we use HTTP listener through Mule palette, always there is error.description, but we will show you in a different way once error occur. Let me add the breakpoint. Is deployed. Let me hit the API and it came here. Clear the console. Go to Mule debugger. If you see here, currently we don't have anything relate any error object for this one. Okay, but because there is no error, but now go to the next error occurred. So if you see, this error object is created, and here we have description, detailed description, error type, errors, exception, mule message, serial version ID, everything. It's a complete error object. So now if you see, what is the error type here? Error type is like HTTP unauthorized. I explained you namespace and identifier, but here we have mule and expression. So this is the mule expression. So mule colon expression. So mule is our namespace and expression is our identifier. Okay. So this we get under error type. So how if our requirement is we need to uh, give in the response, we don't need to give error dot description. First, I will show you what is error dot description. Evaluate. So your error dot description is this complete thing you will get in the error response back to the user, that is me through Postman. Okay, but we don't want error dot description. We want like error dot error type. So error dot error types. Type. So this one evaluate, we will get okay something wrong here. Error. We will get this. Okay. So if we want to change the response, because it is this error is handled by Mule default error handler, and after that it will come back through HTTP listener, and HTTP listener whatever we want to print in response that we can do. By default it is error description, but we can change based on our error object. Now create next, because there is no default handler, it is handled by Mule default handler, and we get that complete response error description in our response, and status is 500. Now let me change the status. I'm talking all about Mule default handler here. So go to the responses, go to the error here, status code. For example, I will change, for example, 502. And here I don't want error dot description. I just want error. I just want complete error object. Save it. And after saving it will start again our API, because we are just changing it in our XML. We are not changing in our property files. So it's initializing, and after that it will start the application. Started. Near the console, go back, click on the hit, and then F6 error occurred. If you see, this is the error object that is having all these things. Okay, now if you see, text plain writer is unable to write object. This complete thing we get. This complete what error object. Okay, text plain writer is unable to write object region. This blah blah blah. Okay, evaluate. Oh no, this is something different. One moment, let me hit it again. And here, F6, here, error, org, this description select, this should be, but there's something wrong. Responses. Okay, this we can change. It will not as it explain because it's kind of a JSON that we are getting in the error because it's an object. But when we print it, it should not be text plain. If you see the response, text plain writer is unable to write object because it's an object, and text plain is not unable to write it. So we can change it to application slash JSON. Application slash JSON. Okay, and status code 502 should be there. Let me save it. Because whatever error occurred in HTTP listener, it is handled by Mule default handler, and that's why we got here 500. That's why we got here status 500 and error that is occurred in HTTP listener. But now we fixed it. We fixed our HTTP listener, and now we will see. Let me stop the flow and we'll debug it again. When you start as a beginner, you don't know about error handling in MuleSoft. That time every flow is like this, no error handling. But you need to, you need to customize your error message. So how you do that? You do it like this. In HTTP listener, you can give messages according to your requirement, like error occurred. So do take the appropriate action or something, whatever you want to give. Like we are giving just an error object. There you can give your own string also, like error occurred. Simply you can change it. But error object is like complete error object, whatever created of whatever initialized after the error occurred. It's initializing the app and then it will start. Okay, it's done. Now hit the request. It's here. Go to next processor, error occurred, and this time it is this 502. And this is the complete error object. Complete error object. There we have detailed description, message, scores, error message, everything. And here status is 502 because we gave the status in HTTP listener as 502. You see the responses there. We have set the status code to 502, and here it is error, only error because it's error object. So that's why we can change it to application slash JSON. So this was all about default error handler. Whenever any error occurred in your mule flow, and you don't have any error handling for that, it will go to mule default error handler, and that will handle all the errors. And here by default, mule error handler gives you HTTP status code as 500. So for example, if you, because here in HTTP listener, we are defining by default, like by our own, like status code 500. But if we don't define that, if we don't define this one, then it will come directly from our mule error default error handler. And mule default error handler gives you HTTP status code as 500. So this is a kind of interview question. Interviewer sometimes ask, what is the status code from your default error handler? So you need to say it will be 500. That's it. Okay. So this is about default error handler. Now I want to show you one more thing. Run this program again, means hit the API again. And if you see here, when error occurred, here error occurred, and this is the error object generated. Here, I want to explain you some error components of Mule4. So there are specific components in error object that help to retrieve the error details. So there is, if you see here, I make it bigger. If you see here, one by one, error.description, a description of the problem. Okay, so here description, if you click on description, description is select star from use of employee where employee ID this has errors, invalid input. So something is during evaluation of this expression that we are giving for that is kind of a query that is wrong. So there it execute during evaluation of this query, it is giving us an error because this query is not correct, right? So this is about description. Then we have detailed description, a description of the problem. This can potentially be the same or more extensive than the description. So let me click on detailed description. Sometimes it's same or it can be, if you see both description, detailed description, both are same at this point, but this can potentially be same or more extensive than the description. But here it's same. So, but sometimes it can be more, there can be more information because it's a detailed description. In the same way, we have error type, a type that is used to characterize the problem and allow for routing within an error handler. So here error type is mule expression. So if we are using any error handler, so based on this error type, it will go to that error handler if we are using that thing like mule expression. So if you, I will show you that also. Let me show you quickly. I think I will explain you in the next one, error continue. So don't worry. So in the same way, we have all these components, and these are really important when you are using any API led connectivity, any API led connectivity you have, and you want to use your system layer is giving you any error, and you want to get only the error description. So you will get some error from, for example, you are using any HTTP requester, and in HTTP requester you get some error, and that error, from that error you just want error description. Then you need to see what is the error object there, and if in that error object there is a description, then that description you need to access in this way, error.description. So these components are really important every time in terms of like with respect to interview or with respect to your some exams, for because some companies they give you these kind of questions like 5 or 10 questions first as a screening round. If you know all these things, then only they will have your next face to face or interview round. So these are very important components, right? So let me go to the next one. Okay, so next one is, for example, this was default error handler. Now I need to use error handler here. I don't want to use default error handler. I want to define our own error handling with the using of own error propagate scope. So I just search on and need to see own error propagate. So this is the own error propagate in mule palette. Just drag and drop in the error handling. Okay, so this is one. And now I need to put, for example, set payload. This is the payload. Got it? Now go to HTTP listener, responses, and I don't want this. I just want, instead of error, I want the payload that I'm setting in on our propagate. Here, status code, I will change it like, I will not give anything. Just it will be blank by default. So by default, it will be 500 only because we are using on error propagate. In honor propagate by default is 500. Because in mule default handler also it is there is on air propagate. For on air propagate 500 is the default status code. So let me check set payload. In set payload I will just set a message error occurred and we need to store here error occurred and handled in on error propagate. Okay, so like this, I'm giving a string. I just save it. So what will happen when any error occurred this time? It will go to an own error propagate. So let me just debug it again. Proceed, and we'll see. After deploying, we'll see what will happen. What the error message earlier? It was error message from here, but now we are setting our payload, and that payload we are giving in the HTTP listener. I will show you error description, payload, everything in the mule debugger mode. So first it will deploy, then we'll see. So guys, this topic is really important in when you work on the real-time projects. Whatever I'm explaining, all these concepts you need to focus and you need to learn, and everything will be simple in your real-time projects. You don't need to worry if any architect or any team lead ask you to execute the to implement the error handling. Everything will be very simple for you if you understand all these and if you keep in your mind all these concepts. Okay, it's deployed. Now go back to the Postman, hit the API. Is to our debugger point, go to next, error occurred, and now I will show you where it will go. And now if you see here, error type is mule expression, and now go to on error propagate. Here we did not select anything, no type we selected. Okay, so these are defined by comma separated values. Okay, that is if we click on type, we can have multiple error types here by the comma separated, or you can go just search and you can click any means it will select all the error types here, but now we don't have. Okay, I don't want any error type here. If there is no error type at the moment, so let's see what will happen. Mule debugger, go to next. It came here, and because by default there is any, it is any error type it will handle, because it will go to error handler, it will accept any error type that is from your flow. So if you see error occurred, error object is there, everything same like earlier, but now payload is null at the moment because nothing, we did not pass any payload from our request, and no payload is set anywhere. And error occurred, error object created. So now we are setting an error on error propagate set payload. Let's go to the next. Okay, I did not put a logger here, so let's see this. So here status 500, and if we see error occurred and handled in on error propagate, so we got that set payload. Means whatever payload we set in our on error propagate, it will be that. Let me show you by putting a logger. We should put a logger after this one. Now I will show you another one. At the moment in owner propagate, we have type any, but I just want to handle only bad SQL syntax or like DB connectivity. Only these two I want to handle. Other things I don't want to handle. For all other things, it will go to by default error handling of the mule. So let me save this. We saved the program and it will execute it again. Console. Okay, it will take time. So let me execute it by my own. Uh, Save. Yes. Proceed. We know there is an error like in the DB. It is automatically identifying. It will show you there is an error, but still we want to execute because I want to show you how this on error propagate is working. It's deploying. Starting. Sorry, it's a little bit slow this time. Uh, let's wait. Okay, it's starting now. It's deployed. Just clear the console, hit the API, and error will occur here when we go next. If you see, it executed successfully and we 500 and there is no error. There is nothing in the message because in the HTTP listener we put the payload. I will show you again. Send. Go to the next component. If you see error object, payload is blank. There is nothing in the payload. Because if you see payload, evaluate, there is nothing. And same, we are passing the same payload in HTTP listener as in error response. And the same we are getting here. So what we understand from this, because in owner propagate we have type DB bad syntax and DB connectivity, but our error type is mule expression. That's why it did not go to error handler. It is not going inside the owner propagate because on owner propagate we have just DB bed SQL syntax and DB connectivity error types. So we are handling only these two error types. We don't want to handle mule expression. So that's why it went to default error handler of MuleSoft. Now I will change it. Now I change it again. Owner propagate. With this, I will select this expression. Now we have three. Save it. Oh, first execute completely. Then save this and it will execute the flow again. It will deploy the flow again and I will show you one more time. Okay, it's initializing and after that it will deploy or it will start the flow again. It means API again. Okay. starting, and it's deployed, started. Now hit the, okay. So restarting, maybe I saved 2 times. Just wait. Okay, it's deployed successfully. Go back, hit the request. This time we'll see what will happen. F6, go, and if you see, because we selected expression, so mule expression is the type, and for that in owner propagate we have expression, so that's why it went to owner propagate. That in our error handling, it did not go to the by default mule error handler. So executed successfully. Okay, and now we have this error message and error status. So this was simple our own error propagate. Now I will show you own error continue. I will show you own error continue. Let me edit this one only. No, I will just remove this completely, and later I will show you both, because first I want to show you one by one. Now select error, search error, and there select on error continue, keep it in error handling, and there we just set payload, and inside that error handled in error continue. That's it, and set a logger, and if you go back to presentation and I show you on error continue this one. So this is the same case now. There we use 2 flows, but now we have, I'm showing you into the single flow. So on error continue, if we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 or 7, then at the 1, 2, 3, 4th level, if we get any error, fourth one is our DB connector. If 4th we get any error, it will go to on error continue, like 5th, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7. So 6 or 7 is set payload or logger. So it will execute 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7, and then 5th, and it will come out. So let me save this one. I think it's already executed. Go back, hit the API. We have by default everything here. It will handle every error. So F6, it will come error continue, then go to logger, and then it will just see error handler in error continue. So 200, okay. And now in this transform message, we have this blah, blah, blah. Let me point out. Yeah, this, I want to show you something. Just go here. It came to owner continue. It will not stop your flow. It handled, and then it will just continue. That's it. Everything is done. Okay, because we handled successfully. So that's why there is no error now. On error continue, handle successfully, and it will not stop your flow. That's why status is 200, and whatever we are setting the payload, it will come at like this. It will not come as 500 this time. And also, it is not executing this transform message because it is like it is we whatever error came, it is handled successfully, and it will go to the next processor. Next process means in error handling, in the same flow, whatever next processor means after logger, next processor is our listener. After this next process is our listener. So it will execute like this. But when we have this like this, uh, in the own error continue, when we have this diagram in this one, when there is an error at 9th one. So how it will execute? 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, and 4th. It will execute like this. It will not go to the 10th and 11th. It will go back to the parent flow, and it will execute the 4th component. But here, because we are not using any calling flow or something, it's a no simple flow. That's why it going after occurring an error, it is going to on error continue, execute set payload logger, and then it will come out. It's same like this this private flow, old web service. Okay, this is like this. I hope everybody is getting this one. So this is, some interviewers sometimes ask if we have on error continue in our flow, any error occurred, then after DB component, whatever connector we have, whatever processor we have, will it execute or not? So some people, they, because they say we have on error continue, so they answer like yes, it will execute, but no, it will not execute here. It's the same flow, and what it will go just to the, it will just come out to the, it will just come out to the flow after executing whatever in the on error continue. It will not go to transform message. But if condition is something like this, if some condition is something like this, then it will continue the processor. It will continue your processor. It will handle everything that your error is handled, because error occurred. It will stop the flow here. It will go to error handling. Here it is become like a normal flow. Then it will go back to the parent flow and it will execute your next processor. Okay, so this is this. One moment. Okay, so this is your like how on error continue works. So this is the simple explanation through diagrams in our presentation and through our demo. But now, guys, can you go on
So
mute?
Anurag, one question. So like there is no way to call the 10th flow then, like 10th component.
No, no, there is
Oh,
no way. Yeah. Okay, so now I want to show you both on error propagate and on error continue in one flow. On error propagate also I will add it here, and here I will set the payload. Set payload here, and then logger. Okay, in set payload I will just pass the same message like error handled in on error propagate. Okay, and this is the logger just to show you. Here, if you see, every handler except for the last one with an error handler must specify a when or type attribute. So if you go to here, because both error handlers now is using any, means any, there is nothing, we did not define, so by default it's any. So here also, so that's why it's giving you an error in the first one, like you need to define the type attribute or when. So when this will execute, when this will be executing, then you need to give when condition, or you just need to define the type. So what I will do in on error continue, I will just define db beds SQL syntax, and that, if you see, error gone. Now in on error propagate will define only the express DB connectivity. Okay, so in first one we have SQL syntax, second one we have DB connectivity, but we did not define mule expression anywhere. So what will happen? It will not go to any of these flows. Well, means it will not go to any of these error scopes, error continue or error propagate. It will go to by default error handler of MuleSoft, because we did not define the mule expression type in any of the scope. Okay, so let me show you this example quickly. Okay, started, just hit the API request, go back. Okay, still not started. That's why we get this error. Okay, okay, this time started. Hit the API. You see here, go to next F6, because we are having a debug point. So we need to press F6, or we need to go to Mule debugger and press this arrow, next processor. That shortcut is F6. So we will press F6, error occurred, error object created, go to next. Next, it should go to error handler, but we are not defined the mule expression type in any of the scope. So it will directly go to the mule default handler. F6, if you see the response, status, this is the payload. That's it, done. But now when we want, we will define Example, we can define one more on error propagate here. We can define on error continue, one more on error continue, because when this expression error mule expression type comes in that time, we will set a variable this time instead of payload. And in on error continue, I will define the type expression. It will handle the expression mule expression type, and I will set a variable like http dot status. Okay, and here its value will be 2 not 2. Okay, so http status. I will show you something. Okay, it will save. Let's see the payload. Every time we were getting the payload, whatever we were setting in this components, but this time let me show you what payload will come, what will be the http status. Every time we were getting 200 or 500, because 200 by default was coming. So http listener responses, body was payload. In success case, nothing status code, so by default status code was 200, but in error response we were getting the payload, that was nothing. We were not setting, but means we were setting the payload whatever in scopes, that payload we were getting. But this time we are not getting any, we are not setting any payload, we are just setting a variable, and in that variable we are giving http status. So because we are setting http status, so that http status will go back. So I want to show you this thing. Okay, it's still running phase. See if it is okay. Let's deploy, then go next. Next, if you see, this time it came to this one, and it's just setting the variable. I did not set the logger. Sorry, show you directly. Okay, let me show you the. Let me add the logger to show you this variable actually. Save it. Okay, it's done. Let me hit the request, and now it went, and now we'll see the variable. If you see, where's HTTP status is 202. Okay, but problem is we are setting the variable as we want HTTP status as 202. But if you go to the next, if you see the response, payload is fine, payload is blank, but status is 200. Status is 200. We are not getting 202 because if you go to the HTTP listener, and if you go to the responses, and here our status code, here we are not setting the status code anything. We need to set it. If we don't set it, by default will be 200. So here now we need to set it like where's dot state http where's dot http dot status. Okay, so it will be something http. There's a one name. It's my mistake that I gave it HTTP status, but we should give like HTTP status. but no issues. We will read it something like this because a complete string, if we'll give like whereas without this single quotes, then it will give us the error. Okay, so let me save this because on error continue will act as like every handle error means error is handled and it will go to our success response or error response that I will show you. Started. Oh, okay. Initial start. Okay, it's done. Go back, hit the API. This one, show you. Right here, our variable is http.status executed C202 accepted because we are setting http status 202 and this is a owner continue. So in owner continue, it will go to our response is our response body. It will not go to error response body. But when we use as an on error propagate, whatever variable we will set, it will go to our error response status code. Let me show you that quickly. So on error continue, I will just change the this query expression and in on error propagate, I will just choose our instead of DB connectivity, I will choose expression. Here set payload and I will set a variable. Set variable and in this variable I will set the HTTP status and status will be 404 something. I'm just giving randomly 404. Save it. Okay, sorry, I did not change in HTTP listener. Go to HTTP listener responses and the status code in error response. So here it will be where store HTTP HTTP status HTTP status. Now save this, execute. It will build it and then we'll see what will be there. Okay, it's exit initializing. Okay, it executed means it okay, still initializing mode. Okay, started now. Let me hit the request again. So this time F6 it will go to honor propagate. There we are setting a variable with value with value so 404. So go next. Let's see if you see status 404 and this is the payload that we are setting in honor propagate. So whenever we use owner propagate and we want to set some payload variable, whatever that will go to our response, whatever we are setting in owner propagate, that will go to our error response. So this is the main difference. So I have shown you the simple examples of owner propagate, owner continue, and this one. So I hope everybody understood these things. So we will wrap up this class today. Maybe in the next class, I will show you some more examples. For example, I will show you by creating two APIs, one system API, one process API, and in system API, we will create an error object, and that error object we will catch in our another API, and there we will see because we will see all these error components are how these all error components are useful because generally when we work on real-time project we face this issue when any error or any exception coming from the system API, how to catch it in the process API. So sometimes people generally get confused in that. So in the next class, I will show you that example and after that we will finish it. So this will be all about our exception handling. So we'll see you in the next class.